But I'm sure my Lord Chief Justice would agree with me that from Asanteman we are not overburdening you with chieftaincy issues at the Supreme Court because we're able to resolve them here amicably and everything is fine. So your workload from Asanteman, let us do it, and then the others were confused and settle it with the.
I was young Ghana temu adwuma na nyamfinhia wo ha ene aduonum na nanu ada ena ye nyina ye hu ye se empanimfo ya wo temu adwumanim meche executives no ya era Paul Bafo Boni ya ono ye Chief Justice da wo no mo ano eba kotokofie wo be se yera se won pese omo ba na feed ndie ekoso ewo menhye fikesiem yera so ma kwan ene na ebre no aso ya wo mo aba omo de dwumadi no abeshishe so kama na bra wonom eba ye no wo kire se afidie ne de so no kokora wo hwe enipa abodom pem aba manya ka kire se wo de bibia asante bata ho dia eyefe ekron na enipa kɔ ekohwe yie pa nti ama ne de no ayeso kokora fi se wo mo ba ye eni dwumadi ahodo mo didi nyina no enne de no ene danso ewo dodo no a wonom ayenimu na yengina yenima temu adwuma no yengina Ghana omoboa yen woni a obi chinchi won nsa okonde ma wonom ajapade obi wu na wose eche ajapade no a bonisi interstate na emra no hwe na ache na kama ebi kwa wonom asabiemu no ye so tumito so chese eno ne won na de mra anase Ghana mamra constitution no eye adwuma afia hankra de okunu mienu no 1992 constitution no wo mo hwede ye adwuma ma ne ye yie na ye de ye ho niema nyina no atemu adwuma yi ene boa yen ne a ye de yasem koda wo mo hwe de ema yen na akwakoba se ya baba pie mo kotokofie mu na Ghana ha nyina so odu gunsen ye nyina wo career ye pebe bia mamre ne amane de yie ne koso na o meyi enyina baby amamre ene nanom nyina susu eti kese ehye mecha national chiefs na menhye fikesiem kumase ne wo enti amamre na amania da dia tra wiase nyina susu ye kumase nyina susu ti ene menhya no so hwan na wo honom a eye nase etu kotoko hene ya oda Asanteman nyina anu a wo chega ne mu a wante adede Asanteman sa asenko a ne senti eno mo ba ya na awose kotoko hene kasa na ono so se do si hu wonom dwumadie emfinhia wo ha ne aduonum ni no ode ne de etodwa no kosem ni yera kasa na wode nsem bebre na atodwa na ansa na no yenkoi na yenkonkotie ensem a kotoko hene na setu tikasi aso da ye padema Ghana ne Asanteman nyina no yenkonkotie ensem a enei wode atodwa odwumadie no ase ye ba na ba kuminu miense be bokoto dwemo so no yesanim ede amount osimu yi yentinsim.
His Lordship the Chief Justice is requesting the use of this hall, and therefore they came to seek clearance from me. I said, who am I? I don't want to be charged for contempt. So please allow them to use the hall. Because that's where I was trained, so I always refer to him as my chief. He's the president and chairman of today's event. Your Lordship, Justice Bafo Boni, Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana. Nananma, venerable members of the bar and bench, Excellencies, cherished citizens of our dear country, Ghana, ladies and gentlemen. I'm deeply honored to be here with other revered traditional rulers in the midst of this distinguished gathering, our special guest of honor, to reflect with you on the subject that lies at the very heart of our nationhood, the relationship between the Supreme Court of Ghana and, by extension, the judiciary of the Republic of Ghana on the one hand and the institution of chieftaincy on the other. On my part, my Lord, and I believe I speak for all of us, the theme for the anniversary, honoring the past, celebrating the present and defining the future is eminently apt. Equally, the topic of today's lecture, the Supreme Court and the institution of chieftaincy, is particularly apposite. It is fitting that we gather under this felicitous theme and judiciously chosen topic to reflect on these two institutions. One, ancient, rooted in custom and the accumulated wisdom of our ancestors, and the other, modern, born of constitutional and other legal design. Together, we have shaped the character of our nation's legal and cultural identity. Long before the colonial courtroom was built, as the Chief Justice intimated, the institution of chieftaincy stood as a principal organ of governance, justice, and social order among our people. The chief was and remains the supreme priest, judge, custodian of land, and symbol of the continuity between the living, the dead, and the yet unborn. So, disputes were settled beneath the great tree, before the stool or the skin, through processes that prize reconciliation over retribution and community harmony over the vindication of narrow legal rights. So, the advent of colonial rule introduced a second parallel stream of authority, the English common law and its hierarchy of courts, with the Supreme Court eventually becoming the apex. For much of our colonial history, these two streams often ran uneasily alongside one another. Chieftaincy was at various turns courted and co-opted through indirect rule. Yet it also had its judicial functions curtailed and its authority made to answer to a foreign sovereign and foreign law. So, independence in 1957 did not resolve this tension so much as inherit it. Successive constitutions grappled, sometimes uncertainly, with where chieftaincy properly belonged within a modern constitutional order. It is a matter of record that chieftaincy has, at different moments in our post-independent history, been sidelined by political actors who saw it as a rebel center of authority. For instance, laws were enacted to de-recognize persons who, under customary law and usage, had been installed as chiefs. In the same vein, enactments were made to recognize persons as chiefs when they were not, by customary law and usage, qualified as such. Yet, chieftaincy has endured precisely because it commands legitimacy that no statute alone can confer. The 1992 Constitution marked the decisive turning point in this long history. Article 270 guarantees the institution of chieftaincy, together with the traditional councils, as established by customary law and usage, and expressly forecloses Parliament from legislating in a manner that detracts from or derogates from the honor of dignity of the institution. My Lord Chief Justice, this must serve as a notice to all persons, especially those of the bench and bar, that none are intimately familiar with the laws that concern the institution of chieftaincy. The institution of chieftaincy is therefore not merely tolerated by a modern constitutional order, it is entrenched within it and recognized as a co-equal pillar of our governance architecture. Yet, recognition alone does not resolve every question. It has fallen to the traditional councils, judicial committees of the House of Chiefs, and ultimately to the Supreme Court to give that recognition practical content. The Supreme Court has, over the decades, developed a substantial and increasingly sophisticated jurisprudence on chieftaincy matters, determining the boundaries of the exclusive jurisdiction of the judicial committees under Articles 273 and 274, the Chieftaincy Act, the relevant regulations and other related legal frameworks, adjudicating vexed questions of stool and skin succession, and referring the perennial disputes over stool lands to which our courts continue to devote considerable attention. Sure. In this role, the Supreme Court has acted not as a rival to Nananum, but at its best as a steadying institutional platform, a forum of last resort where the ancient wisdom of custom is tested against and reconciled with the values of our written constitution and other laws, including due process, non-discrimination, and the rule of law. Sure. Where custom is unclear, contested, or has evolved with the community that lives by it, the court has increasingly recognized its own institutional humility, deferring to those who lived and inherited knowledge of the custom in question, while standing ready to intervene where fundamental rights are genuinely at stake. Sure. We must be candid, though, about the strains in this relationship. Delays in resolving chieftaincy disputes, some spanning generations, have at times undermined public confidence and left communities without settled leadership for unconscionably long periods. Sure. Overlapping and occasionally uncertain jurisdictional lines between regular courts and the judicial committees continue to generate satellite litigation. These are not indictments of other institutions. They are the honest growing pains of two systems of authority still learning fully to speak one constitutional language. Sure. But I'm sure my Lord Chief Justice would agree with me that from Asanteman we are not overburdening you with chieftaincy issues at the Supreme Court, because we're able to resolve them here amicably and everything is fine. Sure. So your workload from Asanteman, let us do it, and then the others were confusing, settle it with them. Sure. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, today is rightly a day of celebration. We celebrate an institution of chieftaincy that has proven resilient, adaptive, and indispensable, the custodian of land and culture, the first responder in community development, and the moral voice invoked in seasons of national crisis. We celebrate a Supreme Court that has, notwithstanding the burdens of a young democracy, built a body of chieftaincy jurisprudence of genuine intellectual depth, one increasingly studied beyond our shores as a model of how modern constitutionalism may accommodate customary governance without distinguishing it. Sure. We celebrate above all the fact that these two institutions, the palace and the courtroom, have chosen dialogue over confrontation. The choice was never inevitable. It is the product of successive generations of chiefs, jurists, and politicians who understood that the strength of our republic lies not in the triumph of one system of authority over the other, but in their principled coexistence. If we are honest in honoring the past and clear-eyed in celebrating the present, we must equally deliberate in defining the future. Permit me to offer several reflections on the road ahead. The first is that the machinery of chieftaincy adjudication requires urgent modernization. The judicial committees of the Houses of Chiefs must be resolved, trained, and where necessary reformed so that chieftaincy disputes are resolved with the speed and finality that both litigants and communities deserve. Justice delayed in matters of stool and skin is not merely justice denied to individual claimants, it is stability denied to entire communities. Second, greater doctrinal clarity is needed on the precise boundaries between the exclusive jurisdiction of the judicial committees and the jurisdiction of the regular courts, particularly the superior court's supervisory and appellate roles. Continued dialogue between the bench bar and the House of Chiefs of the kind this very occasion exemplifies is essential to that clarity. And three, in Ghana, the final stages of process involved in the making of a chief is the process of registration of the name of the said chief in the National Register of Chiefs. The roles the various House of Chiefs play in this registration process deserves much consideration as a role these various houses, particularly the original Houses of Chiefs, play in the registration process has sparked so much agitations and sometimes controversies. Sure. The provision of the law as contained in the Chieftaincy Act is that with the National House of Chiefs being the body charged with the responsibility of keeping the National Register of Chiefs in which particulars relating to a chief are recorded, whenever a change occurs in the membership of the Traditional Council or there's an occurrence of an installation, abdicating, or death of a chief, the Traditional Council of the area in question is duty bound to report same to the Regional House of Chiefs, and the Regional Houses of Chiefs Act is in turn under a mandatory duty to report same to the National House of Chiefs for the necessary changes and recordings in the National Register of Chiefs. To be sure, it must be stated for emphasis and for the avoidance of doubt that upon receipt of the CD form from the Regional House of Chiefs, it has a mandatory duty under the law to transmit the forms to the National House of Chiefs. The courts have stated time and again that the duty of the Regional House is to transfer the CD forms to the National House upon receipt of same and confirmation of its accuracy. It is a mandatory statutory obligation which cannot be flouted by the Regional House of Chiefs. Sure. The courts have also maintained relative to the duty of the Regional House in transmitting CD forms to the National House of Chiefs that no discretion arises unless there is a demonstrable legal impediment which the authorities have held to be death, abdication, and disposition. Sure. Consequently, the inevitable conclusion to be drawn from the above is that when it comes to the registration process, the CD forms pass through the Regional House of Chiefs, which acts as a conveyor belt or a conduit for transmission of the said forms to the National House for registration and nothing more. Sure. The fourth one, another issue of profound importance relates to land ownership within Asanteman. Questions concerning the nature of allodial title, stool lands, and customary interests continue to generate significant agitations, uncertainty, and sometimes litigation. And I had the occasion to comment when I was at KNUST, where those lands have been bequeathed to the university, demarcated by my predecessor, who then was a surveyor before he became the Asanteman. And that was a barter trade between us and Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah to establish that school for us. Some people have the irk and impudence from family heads or something to go and take it to court to ask for 1,000 and something acres of that school land. And with all due respect, my learned friends, some people also followed that. I believe that is wrong. First and foremost, it is imperative to state for emphasis that in Asanteman, allodial ownership of land vests in the stools who hold same in trust for the golden stool. There are no family allodial lands in Asante. Therefore, families and individuals cannot hold leasehold, can only hold leasehold or usufructory interest in lands in Ashanti, but never allodial interest in or title. Thus, if a person, a group of persons or family claims usufructory interest in land in Ashanti, same should be traceable to a stool, and that person, group of persons or family should be able to show at least a distinctive customary function that they play or perform as a person, group of persons or family to the stool, for them to continue to exercise their usufructory right over the land, but not allodial interest in or title. Sure. And thus the Ashanti Confederacy in 1938 decided that all lands in Ashanti are vested in the stools in trust for the golden stool. This is our customary law, which is guaranteed by the Constitution. And please refer to warranty notes and you can find it there. Sure. Chairman, the Supreme Court in conclusion, and more broadly the judiciary and the institution of chieftaincy are in the true sense joint custodians of our constitutional order, one speaking in the idiom of statute and precedent, and the other in the idiom of customs and lineage, yet both ultimately in service of the same Ghanaian people. The past has tested this relationship, the present affirms it, and the future if we are deliberate in building it as our ancestors and founders were in laying its foundation, promises an even more mature and productive partnership within the palace and the courtroom. I thank my Lord the Chief Justice for the honor done me in staging that celebration here in Kumasi, which I felt I didn't want any contempt, and so please come. I salute Nanano present with us today. I salute my lords of the bench and my dear brothers and sisters, the learned friends of the bar. I have the honor, and my wife too also, but when we are in the room, I speak law. I think in practice, Nanano also qualified to refer to as learned as well. So, Mr. President of the bar, maybe, Madam President, maybe you will think about it. But I will caution not for them to use it for any wrongdoing. And I wish this occasion and the enduring institutions that celebrate long life and continued distinction. Long live the institution of chieftaincy. Long live the Supreme Court of Ghana. Long live our republic. Thank you, and God bless us all.
Eti Otumfuo osei tutu ababiu ye otoso mienu sante hene ena ede ne nsem atu edwa no abusua menkasa tutu asoroboa eniema nan ena mede nam na saa niema nan ne so na mesu me begina so nsema yera kan no bebrebe ni nyina no emu nan ya ebokotodwam na mempese mekasa bebree no mefemu nan pe na emu nan so na nei edi yenya ewo yekurum hanom a enyina yetumi afa emu aba yedi kan kese ene se kotokohene kire se o hwe se de atemu adwuma no esi ayi adwuma na ensama hodo asi amene wonnom titiru ni ahensem a kotokohene se ye kana Asante de a enya de a wama Asante nsem emene wo mokora adai isanse ono anam ne tumi ni nyansa so ahwe ama wakeka nsem wadi nsem ewa Asanteman mu achese ohwe Asante ye parliament na ye refer na mama hene traditional council meeting no na mecha Asanteman council no for Kumasi na sansem no o senka court mo hwe kan no a eno na ye raso transe o hwe kan no ye nyina ye nim se ye kwa Asanteman council na Kumasi traditional council meeting na ye ka hensem ye ka nkonwasem ye toto hia hodo entama obepiepie mu ye yifiri honom nkronkro bi a wo makodi baabi wo makodi nsensem wo adehye abaye nkwo wo nkonwa bi ho ye wahwe siesie ni nyina enti wo se ahensam pa se fa ne sa Asante de debi ye wase wo no ankasa hwa tena se enya breje tena se na no agona be so yi ene ebrekum man hene no be so yi ye nyina ye hunu bi ye wabetena su du ba ko 11 o'clock opegya ne mu nonso 7 o'clock what you see into her said the year sitting say enya abotre duadue nsem ne ma obi abonu nkro yi nsem makoma akono a na chese sansem ne nyina wase nke court me ye koka no yeru adu atena se ama wayi hawo ene dadwene ene load no a enka ekogu court so no wase Asanteman mu de obetumi aka sini pen se na dawromenti waye ne saa e de ama court no a no kwasem ne ye nyina esu ye nim se untante sana nanum bia se ohini we Asanteman temu se o masema wo court ensida just one year what ye twia one year wa so den one year wo pe kingdom bia creating ti wonam so se wo mo mpa aka no wo so wonte ase kotokohene wo so obeka na wo chinchira wonte ase no na nkofo hye na chiche ne kutupa na saafo no ene maso a na o mo de court wo so won court kra wo mu kodi ncho entina kotokohene asemo a wakano no ohene me bom mu asema wo mo ne yo waya de Asanteman ne Ghana man nyina adawase ewo adwumapa ya wo ye ede emayen bia mu nso kotokohene ka cheche mu de a kire se wo hwe ensase a nananom tetete so no a so ye raman hene anase na brempɔnfo no kotoko hene kyerɛ sɛ ensase no ye ensase a ye de ahye aman hene ene abrempɔnfo bi nsa enti asase bia eda baabi no sabi ehye obi nsa na sanipa kɔ no so de saa asase no be som sikadwa no enti sa abusua bi rewremu na abusua bi asase ne ade ne de saa nsɛm no so no yɛnhwɛ ne yie ɛwɔ saa kwan no ɛso owie ye ɛna wɔkyerɛ sɛ Supreme Court no ɛne nananom entem nkitahudie no kwasɛm ni court no aboa wɔnom yie paa court no abɛyɛ supportive and stabilizing way ɛde ama wɔn a na kwasɛm ni wɔkasa wɔka sɛ court no bɛda na chidi ama nananom de wɔsi ebi nsida brebia nananom nyinaa bɛtena ase na wɔn hwɛ court no wɔn hia court no ɛde court no aka no credit no credit de da no ba nananom hia atemu etene atemu fenkyem no yɛra say no kwasɛm ni court ni ye de ma wɔnom paa ntinananom da court ase atemu adwuma no wɔda wɔnom ase aloyafo ahodo no wɔda wɔnom ase atemufuo no ajaajefo atemufuo no nyinaa no wɔse adwuma eko no nyinaa wɔda wɔnom ase sɛ abran no do nyinaa wɔn wɔ hɔnom ɛde ɛma ahensɛm ɛne nananom sɛ asɛm bia bɛbia no wɔn hwɛ na wɔn ndane wɔn akyi ɛmfa ɛma wɔn titiri so ɔhene bi na obi asɔre ne dua so na wɔha ɔhene koro no obi twɛte na ahemfoni ade no wɔse court no hwɛ de yie tu yie ahensɛm no bi krompa enya asante nko bi nkronkro ahodo bi no ebedi court a court hweka ema de datumi to yie Ghana asɛm ne ka nya asante nko nti ewra se nananom ɛwa Ghana nyinaa ene Asanteman nyinaa se wɔn da Supreme Court no ase anasa temu adwuma no ase sɛ brenu do nyinaa no nananom hia wɔnom a wɔn nda ne wɔn akyi ɛmfa ɛma wɔnom afei yewra ɛkyerɛ sɛ de twato ya meka eno nia die bokoto dwom ye pantimide etwato no na meka no brofo kakra mi wi ana me de abatwi no e de amamo or see the roles the different groups that is a House of Chiefs regional House of Chiefs jumedia womudi the roles that they play in the process of officially registering who is a chief NTM jumedia regional house no edi ewo bra ye kwa register oman hini bi ewo National House of Chiefs no really need to be thought about carefully ewo se omo hwe saade no yie pa and giving a lot of attention na afin so ye ma yani ekọ ho yie yani yaso na ye dadwene ho yie se ekwan ya nananom enna mama mrani amane ekwan so esi wo hini bi se paramount chiefs oman hini bi na ye wie se yemfo process bi so na house bi for CD forms nko national man nko gazette no saade no a ekoso no na sa process ni mu no ho kakra no aban ya na sa temu adwuma no yewra bafo boni mu nyina moto ya address e mo ne de yewra kam asem bi na mo mani nko ho enne sa statement we ni ade a ekoso e wo house ahodo bi a emmo amenu mienu ene sai me case so pain say yewra de wa modin nanso so ye problem kase e wo hanom ye won ye so mo from ho lawyer fo nanso so na yentumi ehu wo mo wo bra lawyer fo anase atemu adwuma no edu official da o haduonum wo mo etumi ansiase so mo from ho lawyer fo a wo mo titi nkonwa so na bia bo mo ho asafo hene e wo krom hanom a enye na ye montungu ye ko amamani amani ekwan so abusuo panyini ahye ni adehye ni nyina ase esumasi enna yede ne eba bra ohima bi ni honom so ohima wo hompo a ohima ase esumasi na mde ne ba so oman hene enti yemfa ne nko ye be kwa kodru house wo se enko gazette no CD forms no a ennam house no secretary prepare dia ko national ama National House of Chiefs no gazette no kwabrani bi tumi tsira ne naso se mempre ne mpre tsira abra onsi hini ntu hini wo ho eno na kotoko hini kire se saade no yaade a wo se omo hwe na yema yanu ko saade no ho se yenam process ne so e dia akwa gazette ni pakro no die na si kwan say yentumi nkonko gazette ne pakro no asomdwem wa abra wo for all the necessary process ya e wo se ni pakro no wo fam na emma no tumi se wo man hene wo fam no obi ti house honom na oba be yentemgyinafo ebe hadwene ho se me ma yen CD from sin conform ma yen gazette ne da no one say na amene menu me nyina be dia dance ne yen nyina yen ni bit ma point e so na so benten se sa nyama ekoso no enye abusua etan ena me mo obi adin so for brobe me mo obi adin na wodo e de beba sa na tie na ke hwe man nyina mu no aye kwakope baabi na ya bodwa data yi o man nyina hene ne yekoye papa we obetumi na ko obetumi na aham da bi na emom no oye ni bibia abotirem ananom sado mu se kire yen no nti saa na ne bibia tie owo abotire na kansem hunu na ekoso no how and 1900 ntokoni mu de sisi ye no a oba besia kura hwed ne mo ye de ma agina ho de ma asante na yera say saa ne ma ne nyina no eneni ho biem eya asumdue na brenu don bia ope ne santi wakamo asem monkoda nwene ho yie mayen na saa de yera aboso yi niema oka ne nyina monfa pen to paper ho na ni speech na be ya monkonkoje copy our registrar ho na monsensan lines a ehia mon study for note ni ye pa fisene wakamo nsem odane baabi na kwame nkruma kwakwa sere no se fa wo man na ba kamedie ne ho na yenchichi kro bi se wo man Ghana nenti afedie mode saade no begina so betene atia me ba ha ma adwene kotoko hen ni nyina mu no kana no atum fisi wonim se sikadwati ase bibie ne ho no ho a ebetumi abra Asante ase na waka na wo mu soso yen nyina so ehu bi Sante hine fana no nto asem so obi nkokọ to ma ne nkoda ne da fisi ansa no beka asem no na wa hwere no kresu nyina e de afri ho tia na de me nkopene koka bi mama no mpa fisi yero kasa na ansa bebuo mu na me nyame na mba be chiechire mu abiebie mu obanyansani yebu ne be yenka na asem medin dia tesem hene kwaku ADUMASA TV emamumo ene sha enyado makram
sure but I'm sure my Lord Chief Justice would agree with me that from Asanteman we are not overburdening you with chieftaincy issues at the Supreme Court because we're able to resolve them here amicably and everything is fine.
Sure.
So your workload from Asanteman, let us do it, and then the others were confusing, settle it with the